Hello, this is Ozone Ocean, and this is the Great Khan. That was the worst Ozone Ocean impression I think it's possible.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST. We're going on to number 437. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tanserine. Hi, Tans.
Hello.
Bones. Hi, Bones.
Hello.
And Pitface, but she's there's vacuuming going on, so she can't actually be live at this moment in time. But she's back from Hungary. It's amazing she's come back. In this particular QUACKCAST, we're going to be talking about the idea of the old warrior trope that's in pop culture. So comics, movies, books, anything you can name, the old warrior trope is a rather interesting thing, as opposed to, all the other tropes, the young person trope, just experiencing the world, that kind of thing. I think that's probably the easiest to think about opposite of the old warrior trope. But before we get into that, we'll have to bring up the featured comic. Featured comic was a comic I featured this week, and it was called The Great Khan. So I'll be talking about The Great Khan now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature this week was The Great Khan. Poor Gil owns a true terror of a bunny. The Great Khan is a name this huge, surly, fluffy fellow more than lives up to. He's a terror for his master. Not cute in the slightest. This is a funny comic strip with the occasional full-page, full-colour spreads about the trials and tribulations of Gil and his big, crazy grey bunny rabbit. It's a nice, easy read and has been updating on the site since about 2010, so quite a long time. If you like comic strips and zany humour, then this is for you. The art is sometimes black and white and sometimes full digital colour. It's quite professional in the comic characterizations and style. The colour work is beautiful. The writing style is mostly 3-panel gag style humour, comic strip sort of stuff. Punchline, setup, punchline, reveal, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it's a very good comic. It's done by GR8K4AN. Haha, basically Great Khan in lead speak, and it's rated E for everyone, so yeah, worth reading. Yeah, he's been doing this for quite a long time, so that's 9 years now. Hasn't been updating that frequently, but it did update in the last few weeks, so I thought now is the time to feature it, because he's done about 3 updates in a row, which is fantastic, and it's good to update such a long-running comic that's been around so long. He's a one-man band, so he's the writer and the artist, and he's doing a pretty good job of it, especially the artwork, which he really excels at. Anyway, so I hope you like The Great Khan and give it a little read. There's not many pages to go through, but it's worth it to have a look. Okay, read The Great Khan by Great Khan, rated E. And that was the featured comic, The Great Khan. So next up we have the musical theme. Gumballs has given us the musical theme to Sunstrike and Blue Mist, an origin story. That's the full name of the comic. Sunstrike and Blue Mist, an origin story. This is a comic by Sharos49. It's been featured already. I featured it, actually. And yeah, it's rated T. Anyway, so Gun Wallace's music. And let's see. Plotting, sneaking, stealthily creeping, sidling along in the shadows, action, danger, covert missions, and secrets. This jaunty tune is the perfect spy theme. So take it away, Gun Wallace, with Sunstrike and Blue Mist. And that was Sunstrike and Blue Mist. Gummalus, thank you very much for your theme for that. And yeah, please read Sharose 49, the comics by Sharose 49, of course. Sunstrike and Blue Mist, an origin story. All right, so after that we have the topic, an old warrior. Baines, you came up with this topic because of the TV series that's going to be based around Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of one of the versions of the Starship Enterprise from the TV show Star Trek Next Generation. So now he is retired from Starfleet, presumably, or something, and there's going to be a story based around him, pretty much based around the trope, of the old warrior.
That's what it looks like, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if that's how it's going to play out. I'm not sure if it's going to be good or what, but
it has inspired you to come up with a topic, basically.
That's at least the impression I got in part from that preview, was that it was going to be kind of a Logan type story with Picard coming out of, I mean, somewhat. We're just in that general kind of mold where it's like the retired old guy, old warrior, old soldier, metaphorically speaking, who returns back to active life to protect this mysterious new arrival, and rejoins the adventure and sort of goes on one last mission, even if it ends up being a multiple season long mission. Who knows? So it made me think of like how that's been like, that type of story is something I always respond to. I always love that. I always, even all the way back to when I was a kid reading like Hardy Boys, like I like the idea of like, even though the character almost never appeared, their father was like this legendary private eye. And that really always captured my imagination. And I love it when the old guy or old gal now more comes back, and you can, your mind, like just your imagination goes wild with like everything they've been through and everything they've seen. And it's like, now they feel they've reached the end, but then you can see them kind of have one last, mission or one last story or whatever.
Well, that is appealing. Now you say that. I mean, think about, say, very silly cartoon, The Venture Brothers. I love that. And the title of it is about Rusty Venture's two children. I can't remember their names, but yeah, they're the Venture Brothers. But the show is not about them at all. They're like an afterthought. It's about Rusty and Samson. So it's about the old warriors, which makes it more fun. And Samson is a fantastic old warrior trope. He is like an uber man. He's also got the thing where he's like out of his time now. The world's moved on, and he's still trying to fit into it. He's still got the old, behaviors and tastes and stuff like that from his youth, and that doesn't really fit into the modern world he finds himself in. Brock Samson, that's the character. So he's a perfect example of the old warrior trope, and so much fun because of it. And he exemplifies all those things, being out of your time, but still being involved in the world. And because you have that experience and that knowledge of the world, you apply it in unusual and novel ways that the younger people around you really don't understand. So you have a bit of a friction there too. Mm-hmm. Which, that's a really great example of it. You've seen that, of course, haven't you, Baines? The Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
Everybody
he's that kind of seasoned warrior character. Of course, he's very much active still, but he's now like, at least in some episodes, he's like a kind of a babysitter now, like either babysitting Rusty or the kids. He's like sort of got this kind of bodyguard job. So, and he has a long history of this sort of super spy or super adventurer, super tough guy kind of background.
Exactly, and it makes him more appealing than it would have been if he was a younger character and he hadn't had that history behind him. That wouldn't be as an engaging, appealing character. I think it would be a bit more of a turn-off, because then you start to get they start to be a bit overpowered or whatever without any detractions, because that's what you can give an old warrior. You can give them a whole lot of flaws, as well as these abilities. They sort of come as a whole package, don't they? You never have an old warrior he's fantastic about, or she is fantastic at everything, and that's just the end of story. They're just great. That's not how an old warrior is created. An old warrior comes out full of, like, you know, back pains and arthritis and all this kind of stuff, you know, hypothetically. You know, bad things have happened to him, as well as, you know, the more interesting traits.
It's a different kind of character, you know, the old warrior as opposed to the hero at their peak, you know, the peak of their powers. And to me, the old legend is more interesting. Not that the other thing, you know, not that everything should be an old warrior. You know,
no, that would be very tiring and
that would suck.
Boring, It would suck, as you say.
But it gives you that other dimension to things. Yeah, I mean, I think of like the gunslinger in Stephen King's Dark Tower series. You know.
Oh right, yeah, that's
sort
very
of old
popular,
dude
isn't
as
it?
the world or multiverse is falling apart. I don't know. I haven't finished the series, but he's this sort of gruff. I mean, gruff is an understatement. He's this like stony, old, weather-beaten old dude. You know, like sort of. I don't know if he's the last, but he seems to be the last of a certain breed in a world that's kind of passing away. You know, so he captures the imagination like in the same way. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Dig
that's a big part of that trope. The gunslingers and cowboys. The old warrior ones are always more interesting than the young sprogs, and I think that was one of the main things about that genre that really it came into that kind of thing, because you had like Clint Eastwood's famous characters when he was playing those roles.
Well, Unforgiven, you know, really the guy comes
his
back.
last one, yeah.
Tired guy, you know.
But even his earlier ones, he was always an older warrior, unless you're thinking about Gunsmoke.
Right.
His characters were always a grizzled, like, experienced veteran, and that was just his thing.
Now that you mentioned that, I remember. I'm trying to remember the exact title. Probably getting it wrong. I think it's the movie was called Dragonheart or something. It was that movie with the dragon voiced by Sean Connery, and it features this old warrior who is very disillusioned with things. Some being correct in his view, and other things being because of a misunderstanding, basically, of how things work. And he has his own story arc, although he's already one very gruff, last of his kind, very skillful, very powerful in a sense, knight. And he has to train this younger one. Of course, because they always have someone, a mentor.
That's a lot of time. That's their function, to be the mentor kind of character.
Yeah, which I think it's a good thing, because usually when they mentor, they get to go into their background and impart experience, and so we get to learn more about them in many ways. I think that was a very good use, because he was actually not very likable in a very big part of the movie, exactly because he had his own hang-ups and he had his own biases and preconceptions about things. So, what I wanted to say is that, in my opinion, he is one of the main characters along with the dragon.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, when we were chatting just before the video, Pitt was waxing very lyrical about mentors. That is an interesting angle. I don't think that is always the case, but it is often the case. We do have old warriors functioning as a mentor. I think in Logan the character did as well, Baines, isn't that right?
Sort of. I mean, like with Logan, really, I mean, obviously the title is Logan. The movie's about Logan. He's the old warrior coming back, and that's the story. more so than it being about this young girl who meets a mentor. It's about him, so that, and he's, I mean, I don't know if he trains her per se or just defends her. I don't know if I'd call him a mentor exactly, if it's like works quite that way. But yeah, the old warrior doesn't have to be a mentor. It can be them coming out of retirement, even if they don't like pass the torch. Like you see these movies like The Verdict, with Paul Newman playing the lawyer who quit. Very talented guy. He left, and he gets pulled back in to take on this case. He's sort of that along those lines. He's not a mentor, but he's pulled back into the fray kind of thing. So yeah, the mentor thing, a lot of times that is it, but it doesn't have to be. Tin Cup, I think it was called, where Kevin Costner is this old like legendary golfer who quit. He comes back. It's the comeback. Or forget that. Not necessarily. Like in that case, it was sort of a comeback, even if it's just a one-time comeback. We're not sure what happens, but it's that the story is the process of the old combatant who one more job. The old cat burglar who's called back for one more job. Come back and do one more thing, or the retired spy, or like you were talking about Brock, or whatever. Like the mentor relationship is there a lot of times, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the Last Crusade sort of thing with it's not Harrison Ford. I mean, it is Harrison Ford. Indiana Jones, that's it. Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. So his dad is in the role there. I don't like the film. A lot of people do, but it has the that mentorish kind of aspect, and the Sean Connery is sort of the older warrior in that movie there. So we've got that aspect. And yeah, that kind of thing. Say the newest Star Wars as well. We had Harrison Ford's character coming back as like an old warrior, as Han Solo, for briefly, his role in that until he got killed. What was that film? The Force Awakens, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't. I haven't really analyzed those, but to me, like they weren't done well. And it should have felt like that, but it didn't really feel like that. And The Last Jedi definitely should have felt like that. Like Picard, we have Luke Skywalker, who could have been the old warrior coming back, but we actually knew him in his heyday, and we knew Picard in his heyday. That's what excites me. Like, oh my god, a character we already know. We don't have to imagine their whole history because we saw them, and they're legendary. And they do have. There's a block of time that we didn't see them, so you had that same mysterious, what happened to them and all that kind of stuff. Now coming back, hopefully Picard does it well. To me, Star Wars did not do it well at all because the old warrior didn't do enough, especially in the case of Luke. I got to stop talking about this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I haven't even seen it. Well,
enough's enough. But he didn't show his stuff. He didn't train. He didn't really come back in a satisfying way to show his stuff again. And it's like the trope should have been there, but it was like not.
Well,
whatever.
Talking about Star Wars, they did that already in the original film, the very first Star Wars film.
Yeah, the classic mentor character.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was the old
shows
warrior.
his stuff at the end.
And he did that well. Yeah, and he did the fight, and they even did it in not Rogue One, a Solo film, just Solo, I think it was called, played by the guy who played Woody in Cheers. No, he's not Woody.
Okay.
Woody Harrelson, that's it. I can't remember his name in Cheers. So Woody Harrelson played an old warrior kind of character.
Woody. Cheers.
It was. What really was it?
Yeah.
His name in Cheers was his real name.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just blown my mind. So yeah, he played the old warrior in Solo, and that was a really good role, and it was subverted a bit because of how it was that character played out. But
okay, I haven't seen it, but I have a guess.
Yeah, I won't say.
Okay, we won't say.
Yeah. Well, I won't give any spoilers. But yeah, I like that. It was really, really good. His performance was probably one of the better ones in the whole film, I would say. It was fantastic. So yeah, that universe is ripe with that kind of character. Done well, done badly. It just depends. Let's see.
You have like a subtrope of this, I would say, is the...
Okay.
I haven't seen Solo, but just from what you said, so you plug your ears for, a minute, if everybody. Or just, my guess might spoil Solo. But I'm guessing he betrays Han Solo. He's kind of a mentor who betrays, or an old warrior, old legend who's admired in some way or in some circles, but who turns out to be a villain. That's like a subtrope, I would say, like the wounded warrior, or the guy who used to be great, and now he ends up being evil or threatening the heroes in some way.
Oh yeah. Well, I won't
see that somewhat regularly. See that character type, and that can be cool.
Yeah, I like it when people sort of mix it up like that. There's so much you could do with the old warrior, though I do prefer it to be the main character rather than, when we're talking about mentor. Usually that means they're there to be sort of like the back, like a sidekick almost. I mean, we could talk about like Alfred in the Batman movies. He can be like an old warrior and a mentor character and a sidekick all in one, which that's not as fun for me. I like
that doesn't have the coming out of retirement element to it.
True. It doesn't have that part of it. But it can actually, because I've seen that happen. They're sort of playing, like a side character, like a sidekick, or a bit of a mentor. But then once the situation calls for it, they'll go, "Oh, look, I'll strap on my sword, I'll strap on my gun or whatever, and I'll come out of, the shadows and take a role in the forefront. I'll literally come out of retirement." That I've seen that in.
You could have that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like Hellsing, which was this anime series, manga as well. So there's this character who is like meant to be some legendary vampire fighter. He's one of the ensemble of characters in the Hellsing mansion. So we've got these various characters, and this guy sort of, he's meant to be good, but he's just, being like a bit of a sidekick and a bit of a mentor. But towards the end of the series, he comes out of retirement and he takes a role in the forefront, and it's really badass.
Yeah,
it
awesome.
Really is badass when that happens, when you have that kind of character.
Totally.
So,
where you're kind of imagining... I mean, there's sort of a twisted, strange mirror image version of this in Silence of the Lambs, in a way. Where sort of everything Hannibal Lecter is kind of talked about, and he is more or less one of the two main characters, but you sort of, like, his horribleness is off screen, and it's kind of, you imagine it, and he's in this cage the whole time. And then he is, like, in the last part of the movie, he gets away, and it's like, oh my god! Like, this, like, sort of monster that they've built up is loose, and you actually see some of what he does.
Exactly. So from being, not a main character or not an active character, then they become an active character, and that sort of adds a whole new dimension to stuff.
Yeah, it gives you that same kind of feeling, like, of excitement, like, oh my god, now we're going to see something.
Exactly. Now we're going to see what this character can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do enjoy that kind of thing. I wish I could include that kind of character in my comics. I mean, what I want to do is have Pinky eventually turn into that kind of character. So that's always been sort of the timeline for Pinky TA, to have her, grow older and become a seasoned warrior. Seasoned. I think that's a good word for it.
Old woman Pinky. Do your old man Logan.
Seasoned, yeah. She's covered in pepper and salt. Use rosemary. Thyme, maybe sage.
Yeah.
She's very well seasoned. I like that kind of thing because it adds flavor to your character. Just keep on ramming that metaphor into the ground.
But there is also, though, the other thing. You might have seasoned warriors and seasoned veterans, whatever, and they might not actually look it, in the sense that, taking a little bit from reality, usually people that have survived through wars by being active participants in it and actually being worthwhile warriors in whatever iteration you would like to consider that, they don't talk about it very much, and they don't act like they are, seasoned warriors going around, blah, blah, boom, showing that here I am, this walking paragon of awesomeness. It's just waiting to be unleashed. So, and I think that also is very interesting. Like, for example, in Without Moonlight, the priest is one such veteran, actually, from World War I. And I don't think that anyone can, at least I hope not, I don't think that anyone can actually imagine it, although he is old enough to have been in World War I. And the impression and the impact that he has on people is more like he is this constant that you can rely on. And they defer to him without even realizing it. They are deferring to him. And
so he's like a rock that, a standard by which they can sort of...
Exactly. And he has a really big backstory on how he felt and what he did in World War I. And in this chapter, there will be some touching upon that, how and who he was and how he did certain things. But he will not be advertising it. It's the effect that he has as a person that has actually incorporated the lessons and evolved from this experience. That's what I'm saying. That he is a veteran, he's a warrior, and he is actually doing a lot of impressive things, but very much in the nature of a wallflower. You wouldn't be able to notice it unless he isn't there. If he isn't there, then you will notice the loss.
So you're not going to have him...
will notice...
You're not going to have him picking up a gun shaped like a crucifix and cocking it loudly and saying, "Now shit gets real." Kicks open the church
and I'm
door.
saying it because I don't think it's really much of a spoiler in that. Okay, oh wow, he was in World War I. Yeah. Okay. And that's why I mentioned it now, because it was going to be revealed in chapter 6. We have begun. Yes. Okay. And he actually wasn't he was a warrior, but in a different flavor than your classic field marshal or something like that. He actually was a war priest in World War I.
Yeah, what do they call those? Chaplains. That's what we call them in Australia, at least, and I think America too. Chaplain. They call it in Canada as well, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Not that we've experienced that in the army.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't actually looked up the term for it yet. I admit. Some details I look up only when I absolutely need to. And the thing is that from what he has seen and how he has seen human nature front during certain battles and stuff like that, he has become who he is because of that. And in a sense, he's more of a seasoned priest than a lot of other priests in that sense of the word. So in his field, he is a seasoned warrior. One.
Okay.
And then you can also say that most of the characters there, unless they are kids, they have already survived one war. Because technically for Greece, World War II has ended. They are occupied. That's that.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. There are a lot of different sort of shades to the old warrior sort of thing and different ways of portraying it. I think the one where they are a bag of awesomeness, as you were saying, is that's not so much like a realistic portrayal. Like you said, Tance, real veterans of wars and stuff don't go and talking about how awesome they are and displaying that with their grunting growl. I think that's more a literary trope in order to sort of indicate that they are an old warrior. Would you say that? Like, you give them certain traits and things in order to sort of signal.
I guess. I do think, though, that if we were, for example, in medieval Europe, you had an old seasoned warrior, you would be able to tell that he was an old seasoned warrior much more easily.
Well, just being alive and still being in armor would qualify.
Yeah.
Because he'd be dead if he wasn't.
Yeah. I think that there are different parameters depending on the setting as well.
Yeah.
He would look to be a seasoned warrior, and if someone tried to rob him on the street, they would probably be in for a problematic experience. But then again, you wouldn't have him, I think, unless he was a very specific type of personality. He wouldn't really talk about experiences at the battlefield, and how many infidels did I slaughter in one day?
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily need to have that. You just indicate that by certain traits of the character.
You would show him, either in a flashback. Usually, is how it's done. Either in a flashback. Hey, I can be heard now! Yay! My sound went out for a while. Sorry. Or you hear other people talk about them in certain ways, like, don't mess with old Joe One-Eye, he killed 50 men, which actually interesting. It was Cotton Hill used to say that, I killed 50 men, remember? King of the Hill, and he was the warrior type. For him, it kind of worked because he was so ornery, he didn't care, really, if he was being, too loud about it and stuff. And he would use his clout because he didn't have legs anymore, so
no shins.
he had to be loud and protect himself, and that kind of thing. So that's an interesting kind of take on it as well. But
yeah, that's also very interesting. Absolutely. And it makes perfect sense from a psychological point of view as well. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I never really thought of him as an old warrior, but yeah.
Well, he is, though.
It's true. Racist old cotton.
Yeah.
Did he fight in Korea? That was his war.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't World War II. It would have been Korea.
No.
Yeah.
Or wait.
Was it World War II?
No, because he talked about fighting the Japanese, I thought. Yeah, that was his thing. That's what I think so anyway, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have to go and watch it again. I love King of the Hill. Well, even some of the other characters are sort of old warrior-ish. Because, I mean, they're all getting on a bit, but Bill Dotree, he, he's got a past where he was a bit more of a man than you see him in the series, and he's a shell of a fellow of what he was. But,
Yeah.
he was once a great football player, and hairdresser. I don't know what he used to do.
Well, he's in the army. He's a football player, and he's in the army now, but as a hairdresser. I don't know if he's in the army before that, but yeah, he was kind of like the beacon of manhood in their group, and everybody liked him. And now he's just like a bald, little middle-aged man who is, sensitive and stuff. And dang it, Bill.
The old warrior went in the other direction in that case, which is
they have to check on him every Christmas to make sure that he doesn't commit suicide.
Yeah. So depressing.
It really is. Poor Bill.
Yeah.
Played beautifully by I can't remember the actor, but he's just perfect. So yeah, so many different ways you can go about this kind of thing. Yeah, from Bill to Cotton, and that huge contrast between those two, and also the fake old warrior as well, where you have what's his name? Not Boomhauer, but who's the guy in the cap and the glasses?
Oh, Dale.
He's a fake old warrior because he's always saying, yeah, when I was in the CIA or when I was doing the undercover this, he's always lying and bullshitting about what he's done and indicating stuff.
Yeah, did he ever say he was in the CIA?
Yeah, he lies about that kind of stuff. And when people sort of uncover, because he's like a member of the gun club, and that was a big thing when he was a member of his gun club, and he's like pretending that he's got these, Secret Service connections, and people sort of uncover that, and he becomes like a big fraud. So yeah, he is like he's a different version of the old warrior, just totally like when Tance was saying, yeah, like if you're an old warrior, you don't sort of talk about all the experiences you've had, and he sort of does. He's sort of saying, yeah, when I did this, yeah, when I did that. And yeah, so that's a really, really interesting take on it. I love that show. We have the old warrior subverted in many different ways. So comics, the old warrior. Are there any web comics with it? I think we tried to chat about. James Wright did a comic. So I cannot remember what it was called. It's sort of based on the Cthulhu mythos, based on Hellboy in a bit of a way. It's like old king, old kitty, old dying kitty or something. I think that's his website was used to be called. I'm not sure, but that sort of has the trope. What else? I think we sort of thought. Oh yes, The Last Gunfighter. That was a good one. Baines, you sort of mentioned that one. That's on Drunk Duck. The Last Gunfighter.
Yeah, I haven't totally caught up.
Or
I think it's called The Last Sheriff.
Yeah, The Last Sheriff. Yeah. That's it. That's a fantastic one. I can't think of any more.
Well, are we only talking about webcomics? Or...
No, we can expand it to talk about other
Well,
comics.
You have The Dark Knight. You have a lot of Sam Miller's or Frank Miller's work. I mean, think about Hardigan's story in Sin City. He's the old knight, dude. He's the old guy.
Yeah, totally.
And he ends up protecting this young girl, that he saved years and years back. And he's the personification of the grizzled, old, noir, take no shit old man. If you really want to stretch it, like Judge Dredd's an old warrior. In the comic, he's in his 50s.
Because he ages in real time, doesn't he? As the comics go on, he ages.
Yeah, and he gets more grizzled and like the drawings of him. You see more and more nasty lines in his face as time goes on from just doing his beat on the street. Oh God, I know there's tons more. You already mentioned Wolverine. I don't know. It's a cool trope, man. It really is. It can work out really well sometimes.
It's more interesting too than say when you've got a character like it's not called Bane. Starts with a B. You know that character that you really liked with the huge hair. That's the original version, and he's got like blue skin, and he wears chains and stuff like that. He's...
Are you talking about Lobo?
Lobo, that's it. Doesn't start with B at all. Yeah. So the grizzled kind of Ultraman version of Lobo is way more interesting than other versions that have come about. Like, the sleeker version with the shaved hair and stuff like that is just not as interesting. But a more grizzled version is far more compelling in that kind of character.
And that's also what people knew too. But yeah, Lobo, he was designed as just this big, chaotic kind of powerhouse, and he was designed well in that way. You see him and you know what he's all about. I wouldn't necessarily call him an old warrior, perhaps, but the design of him gets across that grizzled toughness, and he's like a big space Lemmy on steroids.
Yeah, that's I was just thinking that's more like, because you have different versions of him, that version seems a lot more compelling and popular than the other sleeker versions.
Yeah, and I think I actually read at least one of those issues, because I don't like to just blindly not like things, just because it's not different. It's not what I grew up with. And I thought the premise was interesting. I don't know if anything ever came of it, but I thought the premise was actually kind of interesting. Anyway, but we're not talking about that really. The main man is the main man, but
the main man is the main. I like that. Well, we did talk about female versions of the Old Warrior, because they're not as
the Lauries and the Sarah Connors and
they're not as represented. But so Sarah Connor is a fantastic example. We see her originally in Terminator 1 as this very vulnerable lady, and then in Terminator 2 she's definitely the Old Warrior then, ripped muscle and competent and knowledgeable.
Well, it's funny that you call her the Old Warrior, because she's not old, but she has this experience like she's beyond her years. When originally we see her, she's very naive. She's a waitress. She says, I could, but she makes out her credit card, or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Yeah. Like I could barely balance my checkbook half the time. She says that, and then you see her in the second one, and it's this whole new person who's been forged out of experience and fear of the future that she knows is coming. And elder people, a lot of the time, it's the fear of the future which makes them react in a sense. They're aware of how bad things can be. They're aware of the possibilities that could happen that young people usually don't possess.
True.
And which that to act. So that, I think that's part of why she seems very much, why she seems much older. And then in the movies as they go along, in the third one, we think she's dead. And then I can't remember what happens in the one after that. But then the one coming out now, spoiler alert, everybody knows it. It's not something they're actively keeping secret, but she's in it. Mm. So, and as an older woman, which is actually very relatable to a different old female warrior that we can see and can talk about more as an actual old warrior, which is Laurie in the last Halloween movie that came out. She's got this Rambo-ness, and she's
Rambo-ness. Excellent. I like that. One of the things you brought up, though, I just wanted to touch on that is, that these people have experienced stuff and they fear for the future. But I think one of the key things is mortality. The young warriors, they think they're immortal. They act like they're immortal. That's one of the main differences. Whereas these older ones don't tend to act like they're immortal. I think that's one of the big differences for me that I notice. So that they know death, and they know it could come for them at any time. And they know that is definitely a danger, that they're not just going to throw their body into some horrible kind of situation and just see what happens. They're actually going to, be a bit more careful. And that adds a very interesting dynamic, because they're actually not wanting to die. they're actually courting or behaving like death is a real thing, and that lends them an interesting spice to how they're interacting with their world.
Yeah, they're much more aware of consequences and future. The future. Like you just said, they're aware that death is a possibility. Anyway, I'm not going to rehash the things that you just said. I'm following along.
That's really well said. And it's like they've gone through some stuff, and like they've gone through like really bad stuff usually. And it often they are old, like they're elderly-ish, even if they're still tough. But you don't. I mean, with Sarah Connor in T2, I think she's perfectly does that old warrior thing. She's been through hell. She's seen the future. She's like blah blah blah. She's damaged and all that kind of stuff. And then she kind of rejoins the fight, even though she's not old at all in that movie. Like it does have that element. Like it is exactly what I was thinking of with the old warrior.
Well, like Towns was saying,
Ripley has it too.
Oh yeah, Ripley, good, fantastic example. But like Towns mentioned before, it's context dependent. So like she's got. I mean, you can have child soldiers who are old warriors, because they've experienced this horrible kind of stuff, and then you pick up on them later, maybe when they're 20, maybe when they're only 18, but they had this horrible experience when they were 12, and they can have the traits of an old warrior without looking wrinkled and stuff like that. They can still have the traits, they know mortality and all that kind of stuff, and they're scarred, and they don't want to talk about, this experience they had, but they're still very competent because of the experiences they've had, and they're able to, behave and handle the situation based on that. Okay. Sorry, Tance, were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, there's also this other, I was away for a little while, so I'm not sure if you mentioned it, stop me if you did, of the old warrior that doesn't, man or woman, who doesn't consider themselves to be actually an old warrior. And they have perhaps pulled away from happenings and things that are going on in the story because they are very disillusioned. Something happened that completely made them want to quit this particular thing that they were very good at, or that they were basically participants in. And they are now either recluse or they are into something completely different, like they might be merchants, for example. And nobody knows that they used to be this awesome warrior or things like that. I'm thinking now, and it's really impressive that I didn't think of him immediately, although I am a fan, I still am a nostalgic fan. But Kenshin, for example, from Samurai X, is one of those warriors, the old grizzled warriors, although he looks very, very young. He's supposed to be old, actually, pushing 40 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have this whole little stint of comedy where, the Kaoru, who is the love interest, almost faints, like he's that old, like he's an old man or something like that. Like, he's completely shocked that he is so old, although he looks so very young. And this is attributed to his fighting style and stuff like that, why he looks so young. So anyway, but the things that he is doing and how he is doing them are in direct connection with how and why he disappeared, although he was a legendary warrior, and how he resurfaces and why later when we pick up the story as readers. And he comes off him at first as a bit of a klutz, a bit of a clown that is very intimidated and always gives way to things like conflicts and stuff like that. But when the chips are down, he immediately flips a switch and he reverts to his old awesomeness of a warrior. Yeah. So that is another trope that personally I really like. It offers different layers to a character, and they can be both the seasoned, experienced warrior and knowing when things are really serious and when they aren't, and knowing to detect the bullshit in a sense, while they can also have different sides to themselves when they are trying to distance from their bad memories or their experiences or that particular part of their identity.
That's interesting. So it's like the hidden old warrior. You don't even know that they are until it's slowly revealed.
Or they know, but they are in denial. There's also that.
Yeah. Okay. Like the Vash the Stampede in Trigun, same sort of thing. He's a klutz and he's a goof, but it's gradually sort of revealed through hints and flashbacks that there's a bit of stuff to this guy.
Yeah, there's a dark side in a sense.
Yeah, that's a really interesting aspect to it. My God, there's so much stuff to the old warrior trait that I never thought possible. It's not just the old guy with the grizzle whiskers coming out of retirement one more time.
The Gran Torinos of our age.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, jeez. Did you know in the anime, what is it? My Hero Academia. There's actually a character called Gran Torino.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, and he's the old grizzled guy there to specifically train the hero. Jeez, it's feeble.
I love little things like that in anime. I just imagine the dude sitting there giggling as he pens it down.
Well, we've about reached the hour, so we can wrap it up. Any final thoughts about the old grizzled hero, the old warrior, who's not necessarily old, as we've learned?
Have them in your stories. They add seasoning.
Yes, they add seasoning, they add spice and seasoning. They can be interesting. They can be the main character or they can be a side character. You can choose. You can choose. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to the QUACKCAST number 437, and we've been...
Thank y'all.
People.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. All right.
Get the f*** out.